Okay, this video is to cover topics in 5.5. I'm going to start with number 1. Number 1, they give you a fraction and they want you to convert that to a decimal form. All you have to do is enter 1 divided by 4 into the calculator and you'll end up with an answer of 0.25. They're going to give you another number. I know when we saw something like this, we had to do it longhand. But in this chapter, since we're dealing with decimals, you can just plug 12 divided by 5 into the calculator and end up with a result like this. Now you're going to get to a point where, like in number 3, you're going to have a problem, -1/3. Remember, when you're dividing and the signs are opposite, you're going to end up with a negative answer. So that part we know so far. And we enter this into the calculator, we end up with a result of something like this, 0.333, and it will display however many digits that your calculator is set to display. Like mine, the max you can get across the screen is, I think, like 8 or 9 digits. Now, what they want you to learn when you see this, when there's a number that's repeating itself, such as 3, then you're going to rewrite it in mathematical notation as -0.3, and then you're going to include a bar over top of the 3. That's telling your readers that the 3 repeats itself. So, and again, and I'll write this one a little bit smaller. This is your -0.3, and the bar represents the 3 repeats itself. So what if we have something like, I know, let me try this one. If we have, so that was actually number 4. I'm sorry, I skipped. That was number 4. Now, number 3, there's another pattern that you'll be exposed to. And this pattern is 5/12. Okay. Now, when you enter 5 divided by 12 into the calculator, you end up with something like this. 4, 1, 6, 6, 6. And then last number ends up rounding up, just based on how many digits will display on your screen. So, same concept. Whenever you see something that's repeating itself, you just rewrite it. So I'm going to rewrite it as equals 0.416, and I'll put a line over the 6 to tell the audience, okay, once we hit this digit, that 6 will keep repeating itself. So let's move on to number, let me clear that. So number 5 is the same thing. It's just, it's a problem like this. And all you need to know is understand that you're going to end up with a negative answer when you plug it into the calculator. The value, it's a bunch of 2's that repeat itself. So when you enter it as your final answer, this one actually tells you the 100th. So pay attention and make sure you're rounding to the correct place. Now this one's just asking you to round to the 100th place. It's not asking you to identify which one has the repeating number. So be careful. That's why it's always important to read your set of instructions. So this is a 2. Now, all I have to do is locate that position, look at this number. It doesn't make that 2 count up. So my final answer would be -0.22, because since it's this placement, we know that we can't go beyond 2 digits. And that's our final answer. Now, if we end up with a problem like number 6, where we have 77/94, and that's equal to 0.819149 when you plug it into the calculator, 77 divided by 94. And then it's asking you to round to the 100th position. So we locate it. We're like, okay, well, that's this digit right here. So now I got to look at that one. Does it make it count up? Well, it does. So our final answer will be 0.82, and everything else drops. We should have no more than 2 digits based on the placement. Okay, so now we're going to, so number 7, same exact problem. I don't need to repeat that. So when we go to number 8, number 8's using a different strategy. Now they're asking you to evaluate these decimals and try and determine which one is larger. So when you're looking at it, you can see these both have a 4. They both have a 7. Now this is a 7 and this one's a 6. So we know 7's larger than 6. So that's why this becomes greater than. So that decimal is larger than the decimal to the right. They're going to give you another problem So let's see, number 9. So number 9 is a little bit different, where 9, it's a fraction. It's 46 over 95. And they want to know, is that greater than or less than or equal to? And then we have on the opposite side, we have 4, 8, 3, and we know that 3 repeats itself based on that bar. So in order to find out if this is larger or smaller, all you have to do is go to the side and then plug that into the calculator and get your result. And we have 0.484, like 21052, whatever. But looking over here, we only have 3 digits. So we only need to be focused on these 3 digits here. So you can see those digits actually are, this is represented as 0.484. And we can see the last digit, this is a 4, this one's a 3. So we can see that this is greater than. So that's all you have to do there, is just make sure that you convert this into decimal form by plugging it into the calculator, and then you can do an evaluation. All right, the next thing, so number 10 is exactly the same problem, so I won't do that. Number 11, it's just now, for number 11 and number 12, they're asking you to write from the smallest to the largest. You're just writing these numbers. So it's the same concept of what you were just doing. Like for the first one, I end up with numbers like 0.68, and then they give me like 0.684, and the next one would be like 0.689. So the first thing you need to notice is this one doesn't have a third digit. So we know that automatically it's 0.68. If there's no other digits here, we just write in a 0. So that way it has three digits similar to the others. So you can already see if a 0 is in place there, and this one's a 4 and a 9, you can see that this is going to be the smallest, then this would be the next in sequence, and this would be the largest. And that's how you write the order. Now number 12, it just gives you, the same thing, but it just throws in a decimal or a fraction. So you have 832, the next one would be 5 over 6, and then the next one is 0.836. And we can already see that this one is smaller than that one. So we know that's first, but we need to just go over to the side and plug that into the calculator, and that's a 0.8333. So you can already see that it's already in order. This is going to be the smallest, then this is next in order, and then that's the largest. Now let's get into to number 13. Now we're going to be just going ahead and evaluating, meaning that if we have something like 0.7 squared plus 0.4, we have to follow our orders of operation rules. So I'm going to deal with this squaring this. So all that is 0.7 times 0.7. And then we can add in our 0.4. You don't always need to write those zeros. That's up to you, as long as you get this decimal place correct. All right, so the first one, when I go ahead and put that into the calculator, I will end up with an answer of 0.49. And then I'm just going to add that to 0.4. And then my final answer is 0.89. So that's all. The goal was just to get you to recognize, to make sure you square this before you add in that. Now the next one is number 14. Now number 14, it's a division problem, but again, order of operations. So we have 0.8 over negative 0.4. The goal here is to understand that we're going to end up with a negative answer, but let me show you how. So the first rule is, remember, we just handle what's on top, what's on bottom. On the bottom, there's nothing to do, but on the top, we need to add that. So we will plug that into the calculator, end up with a result of 2.8. And then on the bottom, I'll just write 0.4. Now we're going to divide. You can see they have opposite signs, so you know you're going to end up with a negative answer. And when you plug that into the calculator, 2.8 divided by 0.4, you end up with an answer of 7. So again, just revisiting order of operations. Okay, when we move on to number 15, clear this out. So number 15. So number 15, we have 5.8 minus 2.3 times 3.4 plus 0.4. So the goal here is to recognize that we need to make sure that we subtract and add inside the parentheses before we multiply those out based on our order of operations. So when we subtract those two, we end up with a result of 3.5, and the other one we end up with 3.8. And then you can just plug that right into the calculators, 3.5 times 3.8, and you end up with a result of 13.3. Okay, number 16. 16, we've already worked on one like this. And same concept, you just add on top, which is 2.86. On the bottom, you just rewrite it. You know you're going to end up with a negative answer, and you just divide it, and it's negative 1.43. All right, number 17. Now 17 has a fraction added to whatever's inside the parenthesis. So it's 13.4 minus, and then we have 0.2. So we know we have to solve inside the parenthesis before we multiply that fraction. But it looks like I have to apply, since there's a negative and a positive. Remember, we have to change this to a plus and make that the opposite sign. So now inside the parenthesis, we're adding two negatives. So we'll end up with a negative answer of negative 13.6. So we had to add them. So pay attention to your integer rules too. It's going to throw that into you. It's not going to always be straightforward adding and subtracting positive numbers. So whenever we use the terminology integer, that means you're adding and subtracting negatives and positives. All right, so now that we have this part resolved, all we have to do is now take 1/4 and times it by negative 13.6. Now you could easily just put 1 divided by 4 into the calculator, and you'll see you end up with 0.25. So that just becomes 0.25 times negative 13.6. Opposite signs, we know we're going to end up with a negative answer, and the result is 3.4. So that was the trick here, was just to make sure that you set your problem up correctly to add or subtract correctly, and then just convert that to a decimal form so you can then go ahead and multiply it out. Now the last one in your homework is number 18. Now number 18 is going to give you an image of a triangle, and sorry I don't draw the best, so let me do this slowly. Something like this, and then it's going to give you marking like that, and then it's going to let you know that maybe this is 3 inches, and then this one is right here 1.7 inches, and this is number 18. Okay, so the formula is 1/2 times the base times the height. Okay, so all we're going to do is take equals 1/2, and you can see that our base is 1.7 and the height is 3. So these are 3 inches. So now we can multiply out. Now again, if you want, you can easily just put 1 divided by 2 in a calculator, and you end up with a result of 0.5. And if you do that, it would be 0.5 times 1.7 times 3. When you multiply those all out, you end up with an answer of 2.55.